That should record now.
Afternoon, welcome to the local review body. I'm Councillor Annette Ireland, I'm chair to the local review body. I'd like to welcome the elected members that sit on the LRB. We have Provost Fletcher, Councillor Swift, Councillor and Councillor Miller with us today. We have the officers present are Sharon McIntyre, who is the clerk to the local review body, and we have Mr. Andrew Binney for planning. He is the independent planning advisor, and he has no involvement in the processing of the application that is before us today. And we have Siobhan Wilson is the legal advisor, responsible for preparing the local review body's decision notices and to provide advice as and when necessary. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillor Cunningham, Councillor Convery and Councillor McLean.
And do we have any declarations of interest on the application for us today? Okay. Thank you very much. Now it's one review today, 202-104. Subdivision of view and erection of dwelling house at Maidenhill Lodge, Ayr Road, Newton Mearns, East Renfrewshire. Now, I've been made aware, and keep me right on this, Sharon, that there is the applicant has submitted. I'll just check my notes. That they have submitted new information which was not available to the appointed officer at the time of determination. The new information relates to let me have one sec. To pre-application discussion with the council dating back to 2017 and recent photographs of the surrounding area. They have put these in light of the site visits not being carried out just now. I open it out to the committee as to whether we feel that we have enough information to make a decision or that we want to see this additional information, and if so, it will have to be sent back to the planning officer to look at this, and it will come to a future meeting. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. This new information, it dates back to 2017, you're telling us. If that's the case, surely the case officer should have seen it.
Yes, can I turn either to yourself, Sharon, or Andrew, if answered that one? Was this information submitted to the case officer as part of the original planning application?
Chair, no. As far as I'm aware, this information wasn't submitted as part of the original application submission, but in response to Councillor Miller, the case officer may have been aware of it, but not formally through the application submission.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Miller.
I still think we've got enough information here to make a decision.
I agree. I think I've got enough in front of me to make a decision today. Is the LRB in agreement with that, and we can move on? Okay, thank you very much. So can I pass over to yourself, Andrew, to give us some information on this?
You're on mute, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. This review relates to the refusal of planning application reference 2020/0598/TP, which relates to the subdivision of the view and the erection of a detached dwelling house at the property at Maidenhill Lodge, Ayr Road, Newton Mearns. The application site comprises part of the former curtilage of Maidenhill Lodge, which sits on the west side of Ayr Road towards the southern end of Newton Mearns. The plot is roughly triangular in shape, tapering to a point at its northern end. And Lorna, if I could look at this stage, the plan that appears on page 9 of the agenda papers, sorry, 19 of the agenda papers. That lets you see the original Maidenhill Lodge and the site to the north. The site is, I say, roughly triangular in shape, and outlined in blue is the remaining plot that is retained by Maidenhill Lodge. Both the site and Maidenhill Lodge lie within the established boundary of the identified urban area. The site sits within the boundary of the wider Maidenhill Mallet Shook master plan and sits to the immediate south side of development site 3 of the master plan. The site does not form part of any of the development sites identified within the master plan and is not part of the areas for which form part of the overall structural landscaping proposed as part of the master plan. And Leona, if we could show the plan on page 21. You'll see here the application site shown within the context of the part of the neighbouring development on site 3, which sits to the immediate north of the site. Now clearly at this stage this housing hasn't been delivered, but a start has been made on this particular development site. The proposed development involves the subdivision of the existing few of Maidenhill Lodge and the erection of a detached 5-6-bedroom dwelling house. The proposed dwelling house would be centrally located on the plot and would feature a hip roof design. And if at this point we could turn to the plan on page 31. This shows some computer generated images showing the style and scale of the proposed house. And I think that's probably the best way for members to gain an appreciation of what's proposed. Externally, as you'll see, the walls of the dwelling house would be finished in white render with feature sandstone, with the roof being clad in grey concrete roof tiles. The applicant has advised that the few of Maidenhill Lodge has already been subdivided and that the plot is now in separate ownership and does not function as part of the garden ground associated with Maidenhill Lodge. Moving on now, no representations have been received in respect of the application. I'm now going to summarise the reasons for the planning officer's decision on the application. The reasons for the officer's decision on this application are set out in full within the report of handling on the application, which is detailed at pages 53 to 64 of the agenda papers. The report of handling identifies that the application requires to be assessed against policies D1, D2, D7, D11 and D15 of the adopted local development plan. The report of handling advises that the proposed development raises no issues of conflict in respect of either policies D7 or D15. With regards to policy D1, the report of handling advises that in its present use as garden ground, the site comprises a relatively large pocket of undeveloped land, which in conjunction with the wider section of verge that lies to the immediate south of the site, will be an important contributor to the open character and amenity of the area once the development sites to the north and west are built out. It is further advised that whilst the site is not specifically safeguarded within the terms of the wider master plan, its retention as garden ground will provide some visual relief from the wider development, and accordingly it is advised that the development of the site would be detrimental to the open character and amenity of the emerging Maidenhill area. Accordingly, the report of handling advises that the proposed development is contrary to the terms of policy D1, and as a consequence of this, it is also contrary to the provisions of policy D2. These considerations are reflected in the single reason for the refusal of the application, as detailed in the decision notice, which is provided at pages 65 to 68 of the agenda papers. Moving on now to the summary of the grounds of appeal put forward by the applicant. The applicant's grounds of appeal are set out in full within an appeal statement which is lodged in support of the review, a copy of which is found at pages 69 to 82 of the agenda papers. In summary, in support of this review, the applicant's agent has first of all drawn attention to the terms of several items of pre-application advice provided by the council, none of which raise any issues of fundamental concern, with it being specifically noted that within the most recent advice, no issues of concern as regards the impact of the proposed development on the local amenity of the surrounding area were raised. The appeal statement goes on to make the following additional points. The position of the house in the plot helps to introduce an element of streetscape along Ayr Road, which, when linked to Maidenhill Lodge, helps tie the site into the streetscape of the adjacent Robertson Homes development, which lies to the east of the site. The grass verge adjacent to the site has created a much wider open buffer zone at the new junction to the nearby Cala Homes development. This grassed area at the point closest to the proposed house measures over 22 metres in width at its widest point, and the landscaped northern half of the proposed plots helps to maximise the open space surrounding the application site as much as possible. The adjacent development sites do not rely upon a relatively, or sorry, should not rely upon a relatively small area of private land to provide openness and character to the area, with the Maidenhill Master Plan making specific provision for landscaping and planting associated with these developments. Could I remind members that they're required to determine this review against the relevant provisions of the adopted local development plan and also any other relevant material considerations, which in this case would also include the provisions set out within the emerging local development plan 2. And finally, I can advise that in the event of this review being upheld, the case officers kindly provided details of a number of conditions which should be attached to any planning permission granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll open it out to the local review body. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Once again, I must admit the last two applications, the Planning Applications Committee, I could have went either way. This one really is as clear as day. The applicant, reading through the whole thing, the applicant has already done a night and day traffic noise assessment. They've gone to the road department and there's been no objection. There's no objection from neighbours, basically because there are no neighbours. It's to be assessed in policies D1, D2, D7, D15. The proposed development is acceptable in principle, according to the planning officer. And he goes on to say the development is compatible with other developments to the west and north. And on page 57, it complies with policy D15. We then come to policy D1, and there is reason for refusal. The planning officer refused the application because it can be seen from the side of the road, and therefore fails to meet the policy D1 and therefore policy D2. Now, I know where most of you live. Now, your houses can be seen from the side of the road. My house can be seen from the side of the road. In fact, my shed was set on fire from the side of the road yesterday. So you tell me any house that doesn't you can't be seen from the side of the road. So I've never heard such a no, I'm not going to say it, but it doesn't comply. Okay, the officer then goes on to say, as the proposal fails to meet in terms of D1, it is therefore considered contrary to D2 of the ERLDP. This is just nonsense. Earlier, the same officer said in policy D2, under the policy, the application should be supported. He can't have it both ways. Please consider again the reason for refusal, because it can be seen from Ayr Road and Rayside Grove. You what? You know, it's just, and if you look at the map, you would see open space, and as Andrew has shown there, the computer generated site shows green fields either side. If you read the ink design guy, what he said was it would be better to go for a site visit and even a drive-by. Well, on Monday I did go for a drive-by, and to the field, the green field to the north and the east is a building site right now in Robertson Homes, and they have built, or they have shoved earth hard up against the hedge. So the hedge that you saw there has got dirt built up higher than the blooming hedge. And they're saying this is open space. This is absolute nonsense, what the planning officer said here. And I also heard what Andrew said about the garden ground. This plot has never been garden ground. It's a wee triangular space. It's not fit for it. You couldn't even call it a field for a couple of sheep. It's just nonsense. To me, the case officer didn't like what was being proposed, and he's been scratching around trying to find a reason, and the reason he's got is just nonsense. Sorry, I would grant planning permission to this. I'm sure that's not a surprise.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Miller. Anyone else wishing to come in? Councillor Swift?
Yeah, I have some sympathy with Councillor Miller's views. we supported the development all round this property pretty much, and the home that's proposed from the pictures looks uncannily like all the other homes that have been built around it. I presume that's not an accident, but so what we are being asked to support or reject looks broadly similar. Is if we're asking for amenity to be provided to people who can't see it, I'd be surprised what kind of amenity that is. I have to say I support Councillor Miller's view that we don't really have much of a reason, if any reason, to not support the application.
Thank you very much. Provost?
Thank you, Chair. I was a bit puzzled by the heavy sort of dependence on the noise from the surrounding roads, particularly the M77 and the Ayr Road. I mean, if you look at the new developments, and like Councillor Miller went up, I know the area well, I've been up and looked at these new developments there. Yeah. And some of them are actually banked right against the M77. And the road is a bit below, and there seems to be a bit of banking, which I presume is there to buffle the noise. But the first point I would make is, I mean, the test was done in July last year. I mean, the country was still in lockdown. I mean, anybody remembers back to July last year, there was probably about a third at best of the cars on the motorway that would normally be the case. So the figures, I don't know, are all that relevant. And if they're saying it's noisy, then ordinarily the M77 is considerably more noisy, and it's noisy 24/7. I mean, I don't live that close to the road, but I can hear the motorway. If it's got a warm summer night and you open your bedroom window, there's this constant hum from the motorway. So most of Newton Mearns, at least that side of it, suffers a degree of nuisance from the M77 in terms of noise. So I just couldn't quite understand what's different about this house than the rest of the estate there at Maidenhill. Is it? And I'm talking about the lower part where you've got the David Wilson homes, where you've got the Robertson homes. The ones that would feed into Mearns Primary rather than feed into Maidenhill at the top. So is there some particular issue there about noise baffling that I'm not quite understanding? I'm actually very sympathetic to what the planning officer says about keeping it as open space, because it is heavily built up. I think actually having, if it was open space there, would add to the amenity of it. So I don't dismiss that. I think it would. I think it's quite important. But what I'm not clear about is the lodge used as a house at the moment? If this house is allowed to be built, is the footprint considerably bigger than the lodge? So what would be, if it was refused, and could somebody just move into the lodge and live there as it is, and isn't quite open space? So I'm trying to get my head around what would be the difference, other than perhaps a degree of scale, because the house seems to be higher and a bit bigger. Is that really the main concern that we've got, as opposed to the structure that's there at the moment? But I'm quite conflicted on it. I would quite like, I mean, if it was possible to keep it as open space, I think it'd be much nicer, for that part of Mearns. But I suspect it's not if we've got a lodge there. So what else would the land be used for? How could we keep it open space forever and a day?
Andrew, are you wishing to come in, just before I go back to Councillor Miller, are you wishing to come in any of the questions, Provost, that's raised?
Yeah, just to clarify, Provost, in terms of the footprint of the proposed new house, it's marginally smaller than the footprint of the existing Maidenhill Lodge. Now, as far as I'm aware, Maidenhill Lodge is already occupied, albeit I haven't been down to see the site myself, but I do understand that the Maidenhill Lodge is occupied. The plot itself no longer forms part of the curtilage originally associated with Maidenhill Lodge, so irrespective of grant of refusal of this review, it'll have no impact at all on the garden ground that's retained by Maidenhill Lodge. As the applicant has said, the view has now been severed and sits as a separate legal entity from the lodge itself. And in terms of the height of the proposed house, it corresponds very broadly with the ridge heights of the new housing by Robertson Homes to the north.
Okay, right, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miller.
Just a couple of points that the Provost had made. Yeah, I agree with him that taking a noise levels in July last year is very different from what noise levels would be now or in the future. But then at that time you didn't have the Robertson Homes houses there, which would act as a buffer as well. As I say, never part of the garden ground. The Maidenhill Lodge is actually occupied. I don't know if you remember, anybody ever knew Jimmy Rayside, Jimmy and Margaret Rayside. It was in Maidenhill Farm many years ago. Well, Jimmy died in 1999, and Margaret then moved into, she retired and moved into Maidenhill Lodge. She had the house built for her, and she still stays in, she's well into her 80s, so Margaret Rayside still stays in Maidenhill Lodge. So yes, it's been occupied all these years.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to come in? I'm in agreement with Councillor Miller and Councillor Swift on this one. As far as I can see, this meets all the policies, apart from it's been turned down because it should offer visual relief to the developments that are going in. I just don't see that as enough reason to refuse it under policy D1. I think it meets policy D1. I want to move that we overturn the recommendation, or the refusal, and that we grant planning in this matter. I would be looking for a seconder.
I don't think of a surprise. I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Unless anyone's otherwise minded. Okay, thank you very much. Planning is granted. Andrew, you spoke about that there would be conditions.
Yes, the police officer has kindly provided a full list of conditions that he thinks would be appropriate in the event of permission being granted.
Okay, is there anything that we need to draw to our attention, or is it the standard conditions about the materials?
It's standard conditions in terms of materials, landscaping, exactly the range of conditions that you would expect on this type of development. And as far as I can see, they have all been lifted from the established list of standard conditions.
Okay, right. Thank you very much. Sharon, have you noted that? Well, thank you very much for your time. That was all we had before us today. I'll see you at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
You won't. Hopefully I'll be on holiday.